Hello, everyone, and thanks for being in my presentation, in which I'm going to talk to you about an open educational resource titled A parar bien la oreja, Cuaderno de comprensión auditiva. It's a project in which I've been involved since the year 2020. So I'm going to start off with a PowerPoint here. You'll be able to see it in just a second. There you should be able to see it. The title of my presentation is Content-Based Instruction of Spanish Language and Culture through Open Educational Resource, which is A parar bien la oreja, Cuaderno de comprensión auditiva. My name is Juan Carlos Rocha Osornio, and I'm an assistant professor of Spanish teaching stream in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at the University of Toronto in Canada. A little bit of background information. This OER was created in 2020 with the collaboration of two graduate students from my department. They are Daniela Maldonado and Jose Eduardo Villalobos Grayet. They both help create and adapt content. It helped us transition better to the virtual world once the COVID pandemic hit. This OER was incorporated into the curriculum of intermediate and advanced Spanish at the University of Toronto. So we were very lucky that we actually started working on this OER before the pandemic hit, because then we saw that we were better prepared with the help of this OER. The focus is on listening comprehension, as most of our students taking Spanish at U of T are actually international students whose first language is Mandarin Chinese. And we're very thankful for the support of two grants from the U of T libraries and the Faculty of Arts and Science at the University of Toronto that made possible this project. In the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at the University of Toronto, most of our students are actually in Spanish for beginners, as you can see here. But then we also have students in intermediate Spanish and advanced Spanish. The number is considerably lower. However, in these two courses, Spanish 220 and 320, it's where we actually find the students that are about to declare a minor, for example, a minor in Spanish, or a major, or even a specialist program in Spanish. Spanish in Canada is considerably growing. We see an increase in the number of students that are learning this language. Compared to the United States, of course, it's still low. However, we see an enormous interest in Spanish. So that's good for us in language departments here. This information comes from the 2016 census, and most of the speakers, native speakers, Spanish in Canada are coming from the provinces of Quebec and followed by Ontario, which is a province where I reside. 63% Spanish growth since 2001, about 20 years. So Spanish is growing considerably, and this is certainly very good news for all of us. And next, I'm going to get into some of the differences between content-driven and language-driven. I do this because, as I explained to you at the beginning of the presentation, one of my aims with this OER is to introduce students to content-based instruction of Spanish. So what are some of the key differences here? Well, first, we can see here on the first one, on content versus language. Content is taught in L2. And in a language-driven program, content is actually used to learn L2. Second one, content learning is priority versus language learning is priority. Language learning is secondary. Content language is incidental. Content objectives determined by course goals or curriculum. Language objectives determined by L2 course goals or curriculum. Teacher must select language objectives. Students evaluated on content to be integrated. And finally, students evaluated on content mastery versus students evaluated on language skills and proficiency. So I'm aiming this presentation in A parar bien la oreja is aiming at teaching students through content-based instruction. However, we are finding a balance between the two, content and language driven, as I'm going to show to you on the actual open educational resource. To this end, I must say that it's very important that we must work collaboratively in our departments. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to go on with this project and involve graduate students. Graduate students are an invaluable source of help, and this also helps them develop uh, their, their new skills and also be able to show them for a potential job interview in the future. For students who are doing their PhDs, for example, Daniela and Eduardo, have now the experience of being involved in the creation of this open educational resource, and I think that's very valuable. So working collaboratively has been definitely a key point on this project. So going back to how to balance content and language, there's a very thin line here. And one of the first things that I can say is that creating knowledge and developing understanding about a topic and a learning task is of utmost importance. Using language meaningfully and purposefully. Students want to be able to find out about the Spanish speaking world through meaningful content. So, for example, in A Parar Bien la Oreja, we introduce students to a lot of content from the Spanish speaking world that is based on superstitions. Um, Spanish speaking world culture is very into these kinds of materials, and so we found out that students are very interested in hearing about the superstitions that my fellow citizens, for example, in Mexico, have. And last, learning about language in the context of learning through language, extremely important. Curriculum development for content-based instruction is very different from the kind of curriculum development most language teachers are familiar with. It requires a dual commitment to content objectives and language objectives in planning, according to Stoller 2004. So again, it is important to understand that we must carefully balance these two, content and language. And here I'm showing you the content. Well, you're not able to see, but it's actually 14 chapters that we created. Here on the screen, it's only showing two, but we created 14 chapters. And as I was mentioning earlier, we are going into a lot of the superstitions, costumes, and traditions of the Spanish speaking world. We also wanted to focus here on the different dialects from the Spanish speaking world. So we have content from Mexico, from Honduras, from Costa Rica, from many different countries in the Spanish speaking, so that students would be exposed to all of that and not get used to just one variety of Spanish. Here we see a description of this open educational resource. As I mentioned, Daniela and Eduardo Villalobos helped me with create the content, adapt it, and create it and adapt it to this. And it's we have a 4.0 license. Right. So here you're seeing where our main inspiration is coming from and where we selected part of the material. And it's coming from Universidad de Jaén out in Spain, from their project Corpus de Literatura Oral. And we adapted a lot of the content that comes in A Parar Bien la Oreja from this source. We were able to get this through a 4.0 license as well. There you can see, and you can just type in Corpus de Literatura Oral, Universidad de Jaén on Google search, for example, and you'll be able to access all of that. And next, I'm going to go and show you the actual OER. Just a second. You should be able to see it. So https ecampusontario.pressbooks.pub/slch. That's the address, or you can just go on Google and type in A parar bien la oreja, Cuaderno de comprensión auditiva. You should be able to see it. Again, it is a total of 14 different chapters that were created. And we're going to go and take a look at one of them in particular, which is Leyenda puertorriqueña Los Gatos Vengativos. So here we start off with the objectives, what the students are going to learn, the objectives. We start off with some vocabulary. Observa las siguientes imágenes y su significado. Practica la pronunciación de cada palabra. Puedes voltear las tarjetas para ver su traducción al inglés. So that's sort of warm up on an activity here. Then we go on to discusión antes de escuchar. Contesta las siguientes preguntas. Answer the following questions. En este capítulo vas a aprender sobre una leyenda de Puerto Rico que habla sobre unos gatos. Es muy común que las leyendas tengan como personajes principales a seres sobrenaturales, como la sucia o la mujer fantasma, pero también a animales o a elementos de la naturaleza, como los árboles, las plantas, etc. Los gatos han sido personajes principales de muchas leyendas y supersticiones del mundo hispano. También los gatos suelen ser los protagonistas de textos literarios y de programas de televisión, películas para niños. ¿Recuerdas algún texto literario o programa de televisión en el que los gatos sean los personajes principales? ¿Cuál? ¿Cómo suelen ser representados los gatos en la literatura o en la televisión o películas? So, with this exercise, students are able to get exposed to questions, warm-up questions, before they actually go on to the actual content. They can also choose to click on grabar to record their answers, and they can upload their voices, and then they can send them over to their course instructors for grading. And this, of course, depends on the institution. So in our university, for example, some course instructors decided that they wanted to use some of these content, some of the answers from the students, for example, to get participation points. Some of the oral quizzes, as a matter of fact, were designed based on the content of A parar bien la oreja. So this is a very multifaceted content that can be incorporated in many ways. So then when we get into exercise number 3, comprensión auditiva, we actually find out what this legend is all about. And so here students are able to play click.
Este era un señor que tenía muchos gatos. Y los tenía en la mesa, porque él amaba a los gatos. En esta mesa se compartía la comida con el dueño. Pero un día vino una visita a la casa. ¿Y qué pasó? Obviamente lo invitó a comer y él tuvo que ir, que sacar a los gatos para que los gatos no podían entrar en la mesa, porque había una visita que tenía que comer y era, tú sabes, no era propio que estuvieran los gatos allí. ¿Qué pasó? Los gatos empezaron a merodear, se fue la visita, él les dio comida afuera, los gatos no se la comieron porque entonces estaban un poco enojados. Y el señor se acostó a dormir en una hamaca, porque era como se dormía en la hamaca, no había camas como se conoce ahora. Entonces, los gatos empezaron a confabular y cuando el señor se acostó a dormir, los gatos vinieron y lo esgargantaron. Por eso es que dicen que los gatos son vengativos.
So, as you can see, it ends with this phrase, por eso es que dicen que los gatos son vengativos. So we are wanting also for our students to learn the common sayings in Spanish, because that's going to make them sound more like native speakers. So this is a very good way to introduce them to that. We're going back to the exercises. So we are on exercise number 3. So now students learn about los gatos, and we also have an interactive video that facilitates the understanding of this legend there in Puerto Rico. So let's click on it quickly.
Este era un señor que tenía muchos gatos, muchos gatos.
Right. So here we see this purple finger. Esta es la historia de un señor al que no le gustaban los gatos. So their students have to answer verdadero o falso. Let's click on.
Y los tenía en la mesa porque él amaba a los gatos.
So as the video keeps on playing, we're going to see different questions here, interactive questions. Escribe la información que acabas de escuchar. Este señor tenía los gatos en la espacio, space, porque los espacio, space, and students are able to check their answers. Right? So you students are able to see the transcript of all that legend, and then they have questions that students can answer so that it aids them in their comprehension. So, a partir del video, di las palabras que faltan en esta oración. El señor de la historia solía compartir la comida con sus gatos en la espacio de su casa. So, there we have different questions that are meant to help students understand the content, which in this case is a legend of Los Gatos. We have multiple choice questions there. Students are able to practice. And towards the end, we are very interested in hearing from them and hearing their opinion, what they think about, in this case, la leyenda de los gatos. So, de acuerdo con la historia, ¿por qué crees que no era propio o apropiado que los gatos se quedaran en la casa mientras la visita comía? We clarified what legends are all about. This content here will facilitate their knowledge of Spanish as they continue progressing through other classes, upper level courses, for example, in literature and culture, because we've noticed, and this most likely applies to all the departments in the United States and Canada and all around the world, there seems to be this um, how to call it, but there is this reticence, right? When students are learning the language and then they are placed or they start taking upper level courses, sometimes they don't feel as confident, and that in some instances makes them want to not continue their studies in Spanish. So by doing this content instruction in the lower levels, at least in intermediate, as we start here at the University of Toronto, my aim is for our students not to give up on their learning of Spanish, so that they start seeing these concepts early on in their teaching, in their learning of Spanish, and then they don't get surprised when they see this in their other upper level courses. Another question here that our students are able to record. En tu opinión, ¿qué crees que es real y qué es imaginario de esta leyenda puertorriqueña? Escoge el mejor resumen de esta leyenda. Students are able to select the best paragraph here to give an overall resume of this leyenda. Follow up with more questions, more visuals. Visuals are very important also to get the attention of our students. If we want them to succeed in learning any language, we should expose them to content that we think at least that is going to make them interested, right? So most people, when they are, in this case, if they're learning Spanish, and if they find out about this legend of los gatos, of the cats in Puerto Rico, I think they can find this interesting. So it's important to get them exposed to real content, to stuff that happens in the Spanish speaking world. So here we have also a lot of content, fun content here that we wanted to add extra. Los gatos son muy populares no solo en las leyendas del mundo hispano, en los programas de televisión o películas del mundo entero. Hoy en día también son muy populares en Internet. Hay gatos virales que se han convertido en memes, que tienen cuentas de Instagram y que tienen sus propios emoticones. Internet está inundado de videos caseros o fotos graciosas de los felinos. Incluso hay canciones virales, por ejemplo, de Nyan Cat. There we put an article that comes from Nyan Cat, and he talks about the memes that were created. So this is also something that we think students are very interested in learning. And we also go into questions about ¿por qué crees que los gatos son tan famosos en Internet? ¿Cuál crees que es el gato más famoso o más viral en Internet? And finally, we end this section with an exercise called A Jugar, Let's Play. Otro final de la historia, los gatos divertidos. En grupos, imaginen un final divertido para la leyenda puertorriqueña en el que los gatos no sean vengativos, sino buenos con sus dueños. There you have it. And this sums up my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you are interested in content-based instruction, and if you're interested in Spanish as a foreign language, and you think a parar bien la oreja is a good match for your program for your students, feel free to use this content. It's available. It's an open educational resource. It's available for everyone. And as I said in this presentation, we're using it in intermediate Spanish and advanced Spanish. And we started implementing it back in 2020. It's 2022 now. And students have expressed that they enjoyed this open educational resource. So we're very happy with it. We are thinking of perhaps creating more chapters. And in the future, we would like to do something similar for Spanish for beginners, which is the course where we have most students, as I showed you at the beginning. Thank you very much once again, and I hope you have a nice day. Adiós. Hasta luego.